You ever sat in a doctor's waiting room at 62 years old, staring at a bottle of ibuprofen in your hand, knowing the bottle next to your wife's bed has 30 more? Knowing the cabinet upstairs has a third bottle you forgot about, and still your knee hurts the same way it hurt yesterday and the day before that? That was me. 3 years ago. Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, sitting in the back of a buggy because my truck was in the shop, and the old man holding the reins looked at me, rubbing my knee, and asked one question that changed everything. He asked what I was taking for it. When I told him, he laughed. Not cruel. Just the laugh of a man who has watched the English pay good money for what grows behind his barn. The Amish, the real old order Amish in places like Lancaster and Holmes County, Ohio, have a documented rate of conventional medication use of around 22%, while the rest of America runs at 56%. That gap is not an accident, it is a system. And inside that system there is one root, one single dollar root, that they chew or steep or grind into a paste, and it does the work that you and I have been paying pharmaceutical companies to do for 50 years. The first time I saw it was in a pantry near Millersburg, Ohio, in a glass jar with a handwritten label in Pennsylvania Dutch, and I spent the better part of an afternoon asking questions until the woman of the house finally pulled out a journal her grandmother kept. Inside that journal was a date 1893 and a reference to a Lenape practice the family had carried for 4 generations. By the end of this video, I am going to give you that exact preparation, the same way her grandmother wrote it down, and you can do it this weekend in your own kitchen with nothing more than what you can order for $1, a root, or pick yourself if you know where to look. This is not for people building a homestead from scratch. This is for a man who already owns a house, already has a medicine cabinet full of pill bottles, and is finally ready to stop refilling them. Now, before we go any further, I need to tell you what got me skeptical in the first place, because I was the worst kind of skeptic. I was the kind that thought every folk remedy was a story old people told themselves to feel better. I worked in industrial supply for 34 years. I trusted labels. I trusted dosage charts. I trusted the little paper insert that came folded up inside the box. And for 34 years, I had a low-grade ache in my lower back that started somewhere around my 43rd birthday and never really left. I tried everything the pharmacy sold. I tried the prescription stuff when the over-the-counter stopped working. By the time I was 58, I had a kidney scare, and the doctor told me the painkillers I had been taking for 15 years were probably part of the reason. That was the moment I started paying attention to the people who never took them in the first place. The Amish are not anti-medicine. I want to be clear about that, because the internet has turned them into a cartoon. They use hospitals, they get surgery when surgery is needed. The Elizabethtown College Amish Studies Department, which has been documenting plain communities for decades, makes that point plainly. What the Amish do differently is that they consult their own parallel medical system first. Almost every study on Amish health behavior says the same thing. Della Sega in 1999, Garrett Wright in 2016, Graham and Cates in 2006. The Amish go to their own knowledge first and only escalate when that knowledge runs out. And most of the time, it does not run out. Most of the time, the answer was in the pantry. That answer, for pain, specifically for the kind of pain that makes a man in his 60s reach for a pill bottle, is a root that grows wild across the eastern United States, from Vermont down to Georgia, all the way west to the Mississippi. The settlers learned it from the Lenape. The Lenape had been using it for centuries before any white man set foot on the continent. The Pennsylvania Dutch picked it up sometime in the early 1700s, and by the time of that 1893 pantry inventory I mentioned, it was as common in an Amish home as flour and salt. It is the bark and the root of a small thorny tree called Zanthoxylum americanum. Most people, when they have heard of it at all, know it by its old folk name, the toothache tree, the prickly ash. And what it has always done, is numb pain from the inside. You chew a small piece of the root, or a piece of the inner bark, and within about 90 seconds your tongue starts to tingle. Then it goes slightly numb. That tingle is not magic. It is a family of compounds called alkylamides, the same family found in Szechuan peppercorns, the same compounds modern pharmacology has been studying since the 1970s for their effect on nerve endings. The alkylamides interact with sensory receptors and partially block pain signaling. The Lenape figured this out by trial and error 1,000 years ago. The Amish kept it alive. The pharmaceutical industry took the principle, isolated certain molecules, patented their own versions, and sold them back to you for $10 a pill. I want you to picture something. Picture a man in 1893 in a stone farmhouse outside Lancaster, planning his winter the way a man plans flour and candle wax. He sets aside 2 pounds of prickly ash bark. 2 pounds, not for one tooth, for the family, for the whole winter. Because he knows that between November and March, somebody is going to twist an ankle, somebody is going to throw out a back hauling firewood, somebody is going to have a tooth go bad, and the bark is going to be there. He did not have a pharmacy. He did not have a hospital within a day's ride. He had a tree and a knife and 100 years of his grandfather's notes, and his family was fine. But here is where it gets interesting, and here is where the modern story starts to turn dark. Because the question you should be asking right now is, if this root is so effective, if it was so common, why have I never heard of it? Why is it not in any first aid kit? Why is it not in any drugstore? Therefore, we have to talk about what happened between 1893 and now, because something happened, something specific, and it is the reason your medicine cabinet looks the way it does today. In 1906, the Pure Food and Drug Act passed. In 1938, the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act expanded it. Both pieces of legislation on paper were about protecting the public from snake oil. In practice, they did something else as well. They created a category called approved pharmaceuticals, and they put everything else, every root, every bark, every tincture your great-grandmother knew by heart, into a second category called unregulated. Unregulated meant unfundable. It meant no doctor could prescribe it, no insurance could pay for it, no company could profit from it at scale, because you cannot patent a wild plant. A wild root has no shareholder. A wild root cannot be marked up 4,000%. And so the wild root was quietly, politely, professionally pushed aside. Not banned, just forgotten on purpose. The medical schools stopped teaching it, the pharmacies stopped stocking it, the grandmothers who knew it started dying, and by 1970, when the modern painkiller market exploded, almost nobody in mainstream America remembered the toothache tree even existed. The Amish remembered. The Amish remembered because their entire culture is built around not throwing away what works. They do not chase progress for its own sake. When something has been keeping people healthy for 200 years, they do not abandon it because a man in a white coat says there is a better pill now. They write it in the family journal. They teach it to the daughter. They pass it down. And so, while the rest of America was filling cabinets with bottles, the Amish were still going out to the back of the woodlot in October, cutting small twigs, drying the bark, and putting it in a glass jar for the winter. Now, I know what you are thinking. You are thinking, fine, that is a nice story, but what about my arthritis? What about the back I threw out shoveling snow? What about the headaches that come every afternoon at 3 o'clock? And this is where I need you to pay close attention, because we are about to get into the actual application, and I am going to give it to you the way it was given to me in that kitchen in Holmes County, with measurements and timing and what to expect. The basic preparation, the one a man in his 60s can do this weekend with no special equipment, is the chewing method. You take a piece of dried prickly ash root about the size of a wooden matchstick, and you chew it slowly on the side of the mouth closest to the pain. You do not swallow it. You hold it between your gum and your cheek. Within about 2 minutes, you will feel the tingle. Within 5 minutes, the area will feel slightly numb, the way Novocaine feels, but milder. The effect lasts anywhere from 45 minutes to 2 hours, depending on the strength of the bark and your own body. For a toothache, you put it directly against the tooth. For a headache, you chew it slowly on the side where the pain is worst. For joint pain, the preparation changes. You make a strong tea. Now, if you already own a house and you are thinking this only applies to people who can hike out to a forest and harvest their own bark, stay with me, because this next part is specifically for you. You can order the dried root from any reputable American herb supplier for somewhere between $8 and $15 a pound. A pound lasts most families a full year. That is where the dollar figure in the title comes from. Break it down by use, and a single application of prickly ash for pain comes out to right around $1. Compare that to a bottle of name brand painkillers at $12 for 30 pills, and the math tells you everything you need to know about why this knowledge was buried. You do not need a permit to buy it. You do not need a prescription. You do not need to ask anyone's permission. It arrives in a brown paper bag in your mailbox, and you put it in a mason jar in the pantry next to the flour, exactly the way that farmer did in 1893. For the tea, which is what the Amish use for deeper aches, the kind that comes from old joints and old injuries, you take about 1 teaspoon of the dried bark per cup of water. You bring it to a rolling boil, you reduce the heat and simmer for 15 minutes, you strain it, you drink it warm. Some families add a spoon of honey to soften the bite, but the woman who showed me the journal told me her grandmother always insisted on drinking it plain because the bitterness was the medicine. You drink 1 cup in the morning and 1 cup in the evening for 3 days when an ache is bad. By the 3rd day, in most cases, the inflammation has gone down enough that you do not need it anymore. That is the difference between a folk remedy and a pharmaceutical. The pharmaceutical wants you taking it forever. The folk remedy wants to put itself out of business as fast as possible. But the prickly ash is only the headline. There are 3 more pieces of the Amish pain protocol that I want to give you, because the root alone is not the whole picture. The Amish do not treat pain the way we do. We treat pain as an enemy to be silenced. They treat pain as a signal to be answered. And the answer almost always involves 3 things in combination: the root for the immediate relief, a poultice for the location, and a tonic for the underlying cause. Take all 3, and you have a system that has kept entire communities off the painkiller treadmill for 200 years. The poultice the Amish use most often, and the one I have personally tried for a swollen knee, is made from poke root. You will find this in the old folk medicine books from Pennsylvania, including a small reference in Emma Byler's collection of plain remedies. You take powdered poke root, about a 1/4 cup, and you mix it with just enough warm water to make a paste. You spread that paste on a clean cloth. And here's the part that sounds strange. Until you try it, you do not put it on the knee. You put it on the bottom of the foot. The Amish belief, which goes back generations and has roots in old German medicine, is that the foot draws pain out of the body. You wrap the foot, you leave it on overnight, and in the morning the cloth will often be discolored where the pain was drawn. I cannot tell you the mechanism. I can tell you my knee felt different the next morning. I can tell you my wife, who is more skeptical than I ever was, tried it for a wrist that had been bothering her for 6 months and stopped wearing the brace within a week. The tonic is the one most of you have probably heard of in some form because it has been making the rounds on the internet for a few years, but the Amish version is older and stronger than what you have seen. They call it super tonic. The recipe, the way it was given to a researcher visiting a home in Lancaster County and recorded on page 136 of one of the better Amish folk medicine books, is this: equal parts garlic, horseradish root, onion, and ginger, all chopped fine, packed into a glass jar, covered with raw apple cider vinegar, and left in a cool, dark place for 6 months. After 6 months, you strain it. Every adult in the house takes 1 teaspoon at dinner through the winter. The woman who described this said her family had not had a serious illness in over a decade. Now, super tonic is not for acute pain. It is for the underlying inflammation that creates pain in the first place. Take it for a winter, and you will notice the small aches that used to come and go simply stop coming. The 4th piece, the one almost no English person knows about, is the use of burdock. You may have heard of B&W ointment, the burn and wound salve developed by John Keim after his daughter was badly burned in the 1980s. Keim wrote about how he had a vision in the field, walked over to a burdock plant, and understood he was meant to use the leaves. The ointment itself is a mixture of honey, lanolin, olive oil, aloe vera gel, and comfrey root. But the leaves of the burdock plant are what hold it in place and what draw the wound toward healing. I have seen, with my own eyes, a 3rd-degree burn on a child's hand healed without a single trip to a hospital using nothing but this ointment and burdock leaves changed twice a day. The mother told me, casually, the way you would mention the weather, that the doctor in town would have charged $6,000 and given them painkillers that would have done nothing for the actual healing. The burdock did the healing. And burdock grows in every empty lot in America. Most of you have it in your yard right now, and you have been pulling it out as a weed. So before I give you the last and oldest piece of this, the one written in an 1870s journal by a woman whose name we will never know, here is where everything lives. Every root, every recipe, every method I have pulled out of these communities is gathered in one place in the description below. It is called the Amish Home System. Now do not go anywhere, because what comes next is the reason I built this entire video around. Now I want to come back to the prickly ash because there is one more layer to this story that I have been holding back, and it is the layer that, when I heard it, made me sit down in that Holmes County kitchen and stop talking for about 10 minutes. It is the secret finale. It is the thing that has never appeared in any mainstream guide I have ever read, and I have read most of them. The journal I mentioned earlier, the one the woman pulled out of a drawer with her grandmother's handwriting, had an entry from her great-great-grandmother written sometime in the 1870s. It was a note about how to prepare the prickly ash differently for different kinds of pain. And the entry described a method that I have not seen in any modern herbal, in any university extension document, in any of the videos and articles I went through afterward when I came home and tried to find it. The method is this. For chronic pain, the kind that comes from old injuries, the kind that never fully goes away, the kind that most American men over 60 are walking around with right now, you do not just chew the root, you do not just drink the tea. You make what she called the long extract. You take 4 ounces of the dried bark, you put it in a glass jar with 12 ounces of plain vinegar, the woman's grandmother specified apple cider vinegar, raw, unfiltered, the cloudy kind. You cover the jar, you put it in the back of a dark cupboard, and you wait 6 weeks. You shake it once a day, every day, for 42 days. After 6 weeks, the vinegar will have pulled the alkylamides and the resins out of the bark in a way that hot water never can, because the active compounds in prickly ash are fat-soluble and acid-soluble in ways that water alone cannot reach. You strain the liquid through a cheesecloth, you bottle it in a small amber dropper bottle, and you keep it in a cool place. From that point on, when chronic pain flares up, when the knee starts again, when the shoulder locks up, when the lower back tightens, you take 10 drops under the tongue. You hold it for a minute, then you swallow. The numbing effect, the same one you get from chewing the root, is now amplified and held in a form that lasts. One small bottle, made for less than $2 in ingredients, will last most people 6 months. I have never seen this preparation written down anywhere except in that journal. I have asked. I have searched. I have called extension offices. The closest I have found is a brief mention in a German pharmacopoeia from the 1880s referring to a similar acid extract used by Hessian immigrants in eastern Pennsylvania, which fits the Amish brought their plant knowledge from the Palatinate, and that knowledge was rooted in the German herbal tradition going back to the medieval monasteries. The Amish, when they crossed to America, met the Lenape, and the two systems merged. The German understanding of acid extraction met the Native American knowledge of which plants to extract from. And what came out of that meeting in a stone farmhouse in Pennsylvania in the 1870s was a pain-killing tincture that nobody in the modern world has ever heard of, because the only people who kept making it were Amish women writing in journals their granddaughters would inherit 150 years later. That is the finale. That is the dollar root preparation in the form that no pharmaceutical company can patent, that no doctor will tell you about, and that you can begin making this weekend. Order the prickly ash bark, order a bottle of raw apple cider vinegar from the grocery store, find a clean glass jar, put them together, wait 42 days, and from that point forward, the pain that has been running your life and emptying your wallet has a competitor it has never faced before, the same competitor that kept the Amish off painkillers for 2 centuries. The thing I want you to feel right now is not excitement. Excitement fades. What I want you to feel is the quiet anger of a man who realizes that something simple, something cheap, something that grew on this continent before any of our ancestors arrived, was kept from him for 50 years, while he paid people who knew better. That anger is the right response. That anger is what changes a life. The Amish are not smarter than us. They are not more spiritual than us. They are just stubborn. They refused to let go of what worked, and because they refused, the knowledge survived. If you are the kind of person who believes that real knowledge has been quietly pushed aside to protect somebody else's profit, you already know what to do next. You know the system was not built for you. You know the bottle in your medicine cabinet has a markup that would shame a used car salesman, and you know deep down that the men who built this country did not get through the winter on prescriptions. They got through it on what they grew and what they knew. I want to ask you one specific question, and I want you to actually answer it in the comments, because this audience, and I know who you are, you do not comment unless somebody asks directly, so I am asking. Of the 4 remedies I gave you tonight, the prickly ash root, the poke root foot poultice, the super tonic, and the burdock and honeyburn ointment, which one are you going to try first? Tell me in the comments. Just write the name, I read them, I respond when I can, and when I see the same one coming up over and over, it tells me what the next video needs to dig into deeper. If this is the first video of mine you have seen, understand this is not a channel. It is a slow recovery of things that were taken from us. The grandmothers who knew this stuff are mostly gone. The journals are in drawers in farmhouses that the next generation may or may not keep. Every week I sit down and I pull out one more piece of what the Amish, the old Pennsylvania Dutch, the Lenape, and the German herbalists kept alive while the rest of the country forgot. Subscribe if you want to be part of pulling those pieces back into the light. The next video I am working on is about a single ingredient the Amish add to their well. Water costs almost nothing, takes about 5 minutes to set up, and the families who use it have a documented rate of kidney stones that is a fraction of the national average. That one surprised me more than the prickly ash did, and that is saying something. I will see you in the next one. Go order the root, start the tincture this weekend, and the next time your knee acts up, reach for the jar in the pantry before you reach for the bottle in the cabinet. That is how it starts. That is how a man takes his life back, one small jar at a time. Before you close this video and go on with your day, I want to give you a few more things that did not fit cleanly into the main story, but that you are going to want in your back pocket. Because here is what happens. You go order the prickly ash root, the bag shows up in 7 to 10 days. You open it, and it smells like wet bark and citrus peel and something faintly medicinal, and you stand there in your kitchen and you think, all right, now what? And if nobody has walked you through the small things, the size of the jar, the strength of the alcohol, the color it turns at day 4 versus day 14, you are going to second guess yourself, and the bag is going to end up in the back of the cupboard next to the chia seeds you bought in 2019. I have watched it happen to hundreds of people who wrote me afterward. So let me close the gaps. The alcohol matters. You want 80 proof at minimum, and 100 proof is better. 40% ethanol is the floor for pulling the alkaloids and the resins out of the bark. Cheap vodka works. Everclear works if you cut it with distilled water down to about 50%, because pure grain alcohol is actually too aggressive and it locks up some of the water-soluble compounds you want. The Amish men I learned from in Lancaster County used a clear corn whiskey a neighbor distilled somewhere around 90 proof, and they swore the tincture from that batch hit harder than anything store-bought. I cannot verify the chemistry of that claim, but I can tell you the jar I made with 100 proof Tito's in March of 2022 was noticeably stronger by week 6 than the 80 proof batch I made the same day with the same root from the same bag. Same everything except the alcohol. So if you have the choice, go higher. The jar should be glass, and it should be dark if you can manage it, but a regular mason jar wrapped in a brown paper bag or kept inside a cupboard works just as well. Light degrades the active compounds. Heat does too. You want a steady 70 degrees, give or take, and you want to shake the jar once a day for the first 2 weeks and then every few days after that. 6 weeks is the minimum, 8 is better. I have a jar on my shelf right now that has been macerating since last October, almost 11 months, and the liquid inside is the color of strong black tea with a faint green cast around the edges, and a single dropper of that under the tongue produces the tingle within about 90 seconds. The tingle is the marker. If you do not feel the tingle, the tincture is not ready or the root was old. Fresh root, properly dried, properly extracted, will always tingle. Now, the question I get more than any other, is it safe with my medication? And I have to be honest with you the way the old herbalists were honest. Prickly ash is a circulatory stimulant. It thins the blood mildly. If you are on warfarin, on Eliquis, on Xarelto, on any anticoagulant, you need to talk to somebody who actually knows herbs and drugs before you start. Same with anyone on blood pressure medication, because the vasodilation can stack. The Amish do not generally face this problem because the Amish are generally not on 5 prescriptions by age 60, but you might be. And the answer is not to skip the route. The answer is to know what you are doing. Dr. Aviva Romm has written about this. Stephen Buhner wrote about it before he passed in 2022. The information is out there. Find it before you start, not after. The other thing nobody tells you: the first time you take a real dose of prickly ash tincture, a full dropper, about 30 drops under the tongue, you may feel a flush across your chest and up into your face within about 4 minutes. That is the circulation opening. It is not an allergic reaction, it is the herb doing exactly what it does. The old Pennsylvania Dutch called it the warming, and they considered it a sign the medicine had taken. If you have never felt your own capillaries dilate, it is a strange sensation the first time, pleasant but strange. By the 3rd or 4th dose, your body acclimates and the flush becomes mild. The pain relief, though, stays. I want to give you one more name before we wrap, because this man deserves to be remembered. Tommy Bass. Arthur Lee Bass. Born 1908 in Alabama, died 1996. He was not Amish, he was Appalachian, but he kept the same kind of knowledge alive in the southern mountains that the Amish kept in Pennsylvania. He treated people out of a little shack in Leesburg, Alabama, for over 60 years, and one of his go-to remedies for what he called the misery joint pain, nerve pain, the deep ache that comes from a body that has worked too hard for too long, was prickly ash bark, chewed fresh or steeped in liquor. Researchers from the University of Alabama and the Smithsonian recorded hours of interviews with him in the 1980s. Those tapes still exist. He was not making it up. He was passing on what his mother taught him, who learned it from her mother, who learned it from a Cherokee woman in the 1840s. That is the chain. That is what we are pulling back into the light. The same root, by the way, shows up in the eclectic medical journals from the 1890s and early 1900s. The eclectics were a school of American physicians, real doctors, with real medical degrees who used plant medicine alongside conventional treatment. Dr. John King's American Dispensatory, the 1898 edition, lists Zanthoxylum americanum, which is the botanical name for northern prickly ash, as a treatment for chronic rheumatism, neuralgia, and what they called torpid circulation. They dosed it at 10 to 60 drops of the tincture, 3 times daily. 10 to 60, that is a wide range, and it tells you the eclectics understood what the Amish understood, that you start low, you find your number, and you adjust. Modern medicine forgot that. Modern medicine gives you the same dose of ibuprofen whether you are a 120-pound librarian or a 280-pound roofer. Plant medicine, done right, respects the body in front of it. I have a letter on my desk from a woman in Ohio named Marlene. She wrote to me in May. She is 67. She had both knees scoped in 2019, and she had been on 600 milligrams of ibuprofen twice a day for almost 4 years. Her kidney numbers had started to drift the wrong way, and her doctor told her in February she had to stop. She watched one of my earlier videos, ordered the prickly ash from a supplier in Missouri, made the tincture exactly the way I described, and started on it the first week of April. 20 drops, 3 times a day. By the end of week 3, she was off the ibuprofen completely. She wrote, and I am reading this directly off the page, "My knees are not perfect, but they are mine again, and I do not wake up at 4 in the morning anymore wondering if I am poisoning my kidneys to walk to the mailbox." That is one letter. I have a stack of them. I am not telling you this to sell you anything, because I am not selling anything. I am telling you because Marlene is real, and her kidneys are real, and the root is real, and the chain from the Cherokee woman in the 1840s to Tommy Bass to the Amish in Lancaster to Marlene in Ohio is real. So when you order the root this weekend, and I hope you do understand, you are not buying a supplement. You are stepping into a line of people that goes back 200 years on this continent, and probably 2,000 years before that on others. You are doing something your great-grandmother would have recognized. You are doing something the pharmaceutical companies cannot patent and cannot mark up 4,000% and cannot take away from you once you know how to make it. That is the whole point. That is why I sit down every week and pull out one more piece. Because once you know, they cannot unteach you. Once the jar is on your shelf, the power has shifted, even just a little, back toward your kitchen and away from the counter at the pharmacy. One small jar at a time. I will see you in the next one.